Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unveiling the Truth. This is episode 16 for January 25th, 2014. I'm your host, Mark Howitt. Happy to be here with you guys, broadcasting with the Truth Broadcast Network, with other great shows such as Death to the New World Order, The Average Liberator, The Rundown Live, Cancel the Cabal. There's a lot of great shows on the Truth Broadcast Network, so make sure to check out the website and check out some of the other shows on the Truth Broadcast Network. Today, I have some special guests joining me. I have two guests, actually, Tom Barnes and Tommy Blackhat, who are hosts of the show Enemy Within Radio, which is broadcast on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, which has Chris Geo on there. Some of you may be familiar with him from the Zeitgeist documentaries, as well as some of his interviews with Alex Jones and InfoWars. So very proud to have those two guests on the show. Quickly before I get them on board and start the interview, I wanted to mention to the viewers, list a couple of new shows that I've been able to confirm, and I'll be updating the website very shortly with these broadcasts and information on them. Looking very forward to having Judith Baker on the show, which is approaching soon, to discuss her book Me and Lee, as well as her new book about David Ferrie. For anybody who's unfamiliar with her, she was the mistress of Lee Harvey Oswald, and she has quite a story to tell, which is also in her book, Me and Lee. So I'm very looking forward to having her on the show. As well, just confirmed today is an interview with world-renowned author and researcher Fritz Springmeier, who has definitely been an influence on me, so I'm very honored to have him on the show, and I really look forward to speaking with him. It'll be the first time that I actually get the chance to speak to Fritz, who has been a major influence on a lot of my research and a lot of the work that I've done. So I definitely wanted to announce that on today's show, as well as Payday Monsanto. He's an excellent rapper, hip-hop artist who definitely has a lot of great tunes. Some of you may be familiar with his songs from listening to my broadcasts, as I've played a couple songs of his on a couple shows on occasion. But he's got an extensive list of songs. He covers very controversial topics, and very proud to have him on the show as well, because I'm also a fan of his work, and I definitely have a lot of questions to ask him, and I think the conversation is going to be very in-depth. So I just confirmed that with him. Payday Monsanto will be on Saturday, February 22nd, and Fritz Springmeier will be the weekend before on the 15th. So unfortunately, I've had to move the Hitler Escapes to Argentina episode to later on, which will likely be on March 1st. So as I said earlier in the year, I'm going to be planning these interviews ahead of time and announcing them well in advance, so people can know who's coming on the show and what topics I will be discussing on what date. So those are the new confirmations that I wanted to tell you guys today. But without further ado, since time is short, this interview with Tom Barnes and Tommy Blackhat was pre-recorded because of the huge time difference between here and the United Kingdom, and the interview was very in-depth and long. So without wasting any more time, I want to get right to that interview. So here's the interview with Tom Barnes and Tommy Blackhat from Enemy Within Radio.
Hi, it's Mark. How's it in Canada this afternoon? I think it would be there on early afternoon.
It's very cold, actually. It's minus 40 with the wind chill. Kids didn't go to school again today for the second time this week. They're shutting down schools, buses, and all that stuff because of the weather. Goes, I guess you could say, on the contrary to the global warming fiasco.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There you go. Look, I think a good idea for your listeners if Tom explains what Enemy Within is and how we got, how he got it started, you know.
Well,
yeah, definitely.
We started Enemy Within Radio about 2 to 3 years ago now. I've always knew that things were out of place with the government and what they were telling us, the official story of things. But I really got woke up 2 or 3 years ago by a few documentaries which a friend sent me. The first one was actually Loose Change, and it always questioned 9/11. And when I saw that, I realised that there was people out there who actually thought the same thing as I did, and then we started doing a show, and I wanted to talk to people across the world. So basically, we started an open mic show where people jumped in from all across the globe. We had callers from Australia, from Canada, from the US. And then we carried that on, and I started a podcast about a year later. But it was tough getting a co-host who was available all the time. So it went away with the wind for a bit, and then actually met up with Tommy at Bilderberg 2013 last year, and we just started up the podcast, and now we've been going from strength to strength. We've started the website. Started a proper show on Spreaker.com/enemy within radio.
I'm sorry, I'm on radio.
Oh yeah, that's great. So you guys met at Bilderberg 2013, and then just got discussing things, and then that's how everything got into fruition, I guess.
Yeah, basically Tommy was doing the same thing I was. He was just handing out cards at Bilderberg just to spread information about what he was doing, and we were spreading information about what we were doing. And I got one of his cards, he got one of mine, and then we actually just started talking on Skype. It's been an absolutely fantastic thing, even though it was so locked down in the Watford Bilderberg convention. We were a mile away from the hotel. We were set up in a free speech zone, as they designated it.
Yeah.
And we had helicopters constantly going over the top. It was basically like a festival, really. It wasn't like a protest.
Yeah, exactly. The thing about the Bilderberg was that was a frame up in many respects, and a lot of people used it in a beautiful June summer day. You know, it was warm weather, and luckily it wasn't pissing down with rain. A lot of people went there just to, you know, pluck their banjos and sort of, you know, let's say, let the hair hang loose and, you know, be happy, you know.
Yeah.
There wasn't really, apart from when Alex was there stirring up the, you know, the serious part, a lot of it was drowned out by a lot of just, I don't know why a lot of people were there, to be honest with you.
All the roads outside were actually closed down.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible military and police operation.
We met up with one guy at the hotel where we were stopping. Actually, We Are Change Switzerland was stopping at the same hotel we were at. But we met up with this Scottish guy, and he explained that the best, he said, that they'd set up martial law locally. And that's what they've done it county by county. So they basically just designated martial law on this county. And we actually, when we arrived, me and a friend from Enemy Within Radio, we nearly got arrested on the day before. Because we were coming up just to film what was going on. We were going to film the front gates and the security around. And then we went up to a police officer, and he said, "Oh, you can't come round here, but you can go around there." So I was like, okay. So we went round this path. And it's like, okay, so the path leads all the way around to the other end, so we can just walk towards the gate from the other end. So we go all the way around, and then a police officer, as we're approaching the gate, he runs over the road, and he says, "Oh, you're breaching the Terrorism Act." And I was like, all right.
Terrorism.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm only filming. I'm not part of any protest or anything. And he was like, okay, well, I'll not arrest you this time, but if you walk up there, I'll not arrest you.
There was, Tom, to be honest, a lot of, initially, a lot of paranoid police around. But by the second day, everything, when I arrived, most things had calmed down, because the hysteria locally and in the press leading up to the Bilderberg was phenomenal, in the respect that no other Bilderberg before Watford had ever been covered in such an intense way. Even the national media was covering the fact that it was happening, which had, you know, it was extraordinary in that respect. And because of the massive, I mean, the overkill, I think actually they're probably, if you took it person for person, there were probably more police there than the so-called demonstrators. And when they found out that we weren't a bunch of bomb-throwing anarchists, you know, completely out of our minds, out to destroy capitalist businessmen, And I think by the second day they had settled down to a sort of routine where they were asking protesters more about what they were defending, because they had no idea who the Bilderbergs were, and went away a lot of the police probably more informed and with a better understanding of what the event was about than could ever have been organized by the protest.
Yeah, basically the Bilderberg security operation was a testing ground. The police were using new tactics and testing it out. They had these police liaison officers. It was the first time they've ever been used, in blue jackets, who were basically like police officers who want to be your friend and coming up to you, starting conversations. Oh, what do you do? Oh, tell some information, and just having a normal chat as if it was a normal person. But they've later used those police officers in fracking protests and a more high-profile protests later on, recent ones.
You know what is important for the listeners, anybody out there who probably hasn't got the background, I'm sure most of yours do, Mark, and I know that Tom's listeners, most have a knowledge basically of the Bilderberg. But Bilderberg is the, if you like, the implementing and planning side of what was the Jekyll Island Federal Reserve meeting back in 1913, and of course gave us the Federal Reserve in 1914. And it's funny that these two things nearly coincide, because Bilderberg comes out in 1944 as an idea between Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands and Prince Philip of, well, he's the consort to the Queen of England. And the Bilderbergs themselves as a group are basically, you've got to think of Bernhard, yeah? I mean, the guy was a Nazi, he was a member of the SS, so you get the idea of the Bilderbergs. What they did is they consolidated the planning wing of the moneyed financial establishment into a planning operation for the latter part of the 20th century.
Yeah, it seems like the Bilderberg groups, the members of that group, definitely don't want people to know what they're discussing during their meetings, as well as the plans that they're implementing. And yeah, the membership of the Bilderberg has definitely been controversial throughout the years. With the membership.
Well, as far as I know, there is an American law that says that any public servant, which really in actual fact includes the President of the United States, but also means senators, congressmen, members of business corporations, cannot meet in secret with foreigners on in any circumstances, because it is against the United States Constitution. There is a law regarding this, which they break every year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why they're so hated. That's why people gather and protest to dispose of this group. But it's good to see that there are people going. Mind you, you did mention that a lot of the people that went to the Bilderberg this year seemed like they were just there to party and have a good time, and didn't really know the reasons why they're there, I guess you could say, or really know how far the rabbit hole goes. But on the other hand, it is good that there is more numbers showing up to these protests, and there is more media coverage as well, because the name Bilderberg is starting to become more common now. More people are starting to know about it. So
exactly, Mark. But that's the same thing as you've got with mass protests like the impotent Occupy Wall Street, and of course the Occupy movement. We also had one in England around the city, in London. These people were impotent not because of the fact that people didn't understand something was wrong. They obviously understood something was wrong, but on a very superficial level, and they had no demands. The reason why the Occupy movement was co-opted later and basically taken over by Soros Foundation money was because they had no demands. Sure, you can go and occupy any building, yeah, or you can occupy an area of a town or a city, but why are you occupying it?
Yeah, the Bilderberg protest itself was a government set up from the start. It was originally supposed to be two separate things. There was supposed to be a Bilderberg Fringe Festival of New Age people, hippie types, and
exactly what I was saying.
Then a full-on protest of other guys, and it was supposed to be in two different locations. But the day, I think it was 2 days before the actual convention, the license was turned down for the Fringe Festival, which we knew was going to happen anyway because it was always planned that they were going to merge it into one in this free speech area. Inside the hotel grounds where they just fenced it off. And the thing was, it was supposed to be planned if it got full on the later days, which it did. There was thousands coming in on the third day when Alex Jones was talking and David Icke and various other speakers on the stage. You had Dan Dixon, Press for Truth, Luke Rudowski.
There was also a UKIP member of the European Parliament.
Yeah, there was 2,000-3,000 people in the actual tiny little pig pen, as we called it. But people just being turned away, and they were letting one person in, one person out. Then it changed to 10 people out, 10 people in, and the security got worse. The police got nicer as it went on, but the security itself got worse as it went on. Because it was private.
I wasn't there on the third day.
Yeah, it was G4S security, and on the first day you could just walk in with drinks, then bottles, they were half drunk, anything like that. Just walk in, and on the second day they were saying no bottles unless they're closed, haven't been opened, and people were coming in angry, saying, "Well, just smell it, it's not alcohol," because they were saying it was going to be alcohol. And then it just got progressively worse. They got angry. They were starting to be abusive to people coming in. We filmed a lot of it, actually. That was our main purpose there. We were the only live stream that was going all day at Bilderberg 2013. Most of the others, all the other streams were only going for brief periods and then switching off. But we prepared beforehand. I said, right, I'm going to get three phone batteries and I'm going to do it for 6-7 hours.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
so you guys...
Tom, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
You guys must have got some good footage then if you were filming a lot of the time. So basically what you're saying is you documented some of the Orwellian totalitarian police state tactics that these officers were using to keep people in line and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was mainly the G4 security. I must say it, even Alex Jones said himself on the InfoWars that the police officers were magnificent, but the G4S security just got worse and worse and worse and really nasty towards people. And every time something was happening, I was keeping an eye out and then running towards the gate. But we uploaded it all straight to Ustream, Ustream/enemy_within1. The footage is still there for people who want to check it out. We've uploaded a couple of things to YouTube, like there's a couple of interviews with high-profile guys that we've uploaded. But it got worse as it went on, and it got better in some ways as it went on.
Tom, you still didn't answer the essence of my question. What particular area woke you up? Was it the threat of war, or was it economics, or just the general malaise, or what actually sparked you? Who sparked you?
Myself? Well, I was doing a lot of independent research a few years back, I guess 2008, 2009. Even before that, I was, I had discussions with my friends about 9/11 and stuff like that. But what really, really got me waking up and wanting to join this fight that's going on all around the world for our sovereignty, for our freedoms and liberty, was John F. Kennedy's assassination. The CIA's involvement in that, the cover-ups, all the murders that were happening to people who had credible evidence, the Warren Commission lying to the public, all these misinformation, fake profiles. But I started digging and digging and digging, and I started seeing different patterns throughout history that have been happening. But essentially, that's what it was. And really learning about the CIA and their tactics. I was reading as much papers as I could on the CIA, learning that they had multiple identities and they would operate under different identities, how easy it was for them to get passports with fake names, and their relationship with organized crime, mafia members, and how it's prolonged to this day. So that's really what got me really waking up and wanting to do something about this and exposing some of these secrets. So
Well, we know that the CIA didn't exist until the end of the Second World War and was actually created by OSS. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Paperclip.
overseas. Yeah. Well, it was overseas services. Now, in actual fact, the interesting thing about the CIA is that the original cadre and group around John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles and Wild Bill Donovan
Yeah.
was in actual fact controlled as a part of the FBI Division 5, because up until the Second World War, the United States really basically had no, except through embassy networks and diplomatic information and so-called diplomatic missions, they had no international intelligence agency. They relied on the diplomatic networks to inform the White House of what was happening internationally. It was during the Second World War with OSS and, of course, the necessity to understand what was happening in other parts of the world, Japan especially, and, of course, Germany and Russia, that they realized that they would need something on the basis of an international intelligence organization. And, of course, the British stepped up, didn't they? As usual, because they've had SIS since Queen Elizabeth I back in the 1500s. Yeah,
Yeah, John D, I think, founded that, didn't he?
exactly. It was the original 007, yeah.
Yeah.
And the incredible thing was, though, that when Division 5 of the FBI was created, much to the dismay of Edgar Hoover, because he liked to control the FBI totally. Well, when Division 5 was created, which within a year, I think, was redesignated as CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, it was in actual fact run by a Canadian citizen.
Huh. The 5th Division, you're saying?
Division 5 of the FBI was run by a guy called Major Louis Bloomfield.
Interesting.
And he was a Canadian citizen.
Yeah, and J. Edgar Hoover was deeply upset because he wanted the FBI to be the CIA. He
wanted Division 5 to still remain under the auspices of his control. Yes, you're right, Tom.
Yeah, he wanted FBI branches across the world. So basically, to become the CIA, he already thought up that idea.
Yeah, but the British had different ideas. Don't they always?
Yeah,
and World War II gave them the pretext.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool that you guys are from the UK, from England, because like I haven't had any guests from that region on the show, so you guys are the first English guests that I've had on this show, and that's something that I've also been involved with researching, is the royal families and like Chris Everard's research and his work into the occult and stuff like that. And being from Canada here, we have like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. All our highways are dedicated to the Queen. There's a crown on it. We have crown land because of our history with the United Kingdom and the British. Even when the Canadians marched on Washington and burned down their White House, that was done through the United Kingdom as well, through the Queen. And
of course it was. No, you've got to remember, this is something that in world history a lot of people do not understand. First of all, the occupation of England through what we called in 1688 the Glorious Revolution, which was run by a guy called the Prince of Orange. Yeah. The Glorious Revolution was when we were finally taken over financially and through the debt that was owed to the Dutch banks, which goes back to James I and his son Charles I, who got his head chopped off because of this. Britain, or let's say the English, but I would also include Britain generally, the British Isles were very, very anti the monarchies of Europe. They had an independent stance towards Europe, but when the glorious, so-called glorious revolution came in, we were then overtaken by the German, Bavarian, Transylvanian networks that came out of the banking circles of Venice. And so you have to understand that Britain itself, I mean England especially, has been occupied, and we have been the what you would call the militia or the military arm, which has dedicated itself to also, ever since the revolution in the United States in 1776, to destroying the new upstarts that is the United States of America. And this goes on to this very day. The battlegrounds are drawn between an oligarchical system of governance based on feudal law and a republican tradition based on Renaissance ideas embodied in the idea that all human beings are equal and born free.
Yeah, the British royal family, the rule under the false paradigm today, that they don't have any power. So to push out through the British press and the world press that royalty no longer has any power. But they're deeply involved in politics. They're always vetoing bills by the government. The government actually has to go to the Queen to ask for a lot of things. They've got to ask the Queen to go to war because it's her army.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark, you must know that for a couple of years, a few years back, your government nearly was paralyzed because of the what do you call it? The oh man, it's run out of the British Foreign Office. You have a representative of the royal family who can veto a Canadian parliamentary law and actually prevent them from passing new laws.
Yeah, like
I don't know what to call it. High Commissioner. Sorry.
I'm not aware of the High Commissioner. Actually, this is the first time that I've heard of that. But I definitely know that Canada downplays their connection to the Crown big time. In fact, they say that we have our independence and stuff like that, but that's baloney. I went to Ottawa this past summer, and everything there is to the Queen, to the royalty, to the monarchs, the guards at the Parliament building, everything, right?
Notice, Mark, that the head of the state of the Commonwealth is still the Queen, very similar to Queen Victoria's power over as becoming the Empress of the British Empire. Have a look at this. The Australians, same thing. They have a Royal High Commissioner appointed by the Queen of England who has veto powers over Australia. New Zealand, same deal. Canada, same deal. Parts of South Africa, same deal. I mean, when they talk about, the let's say the disinterest by the royal connections, the oligarchy in general, regarding politics in nations, well, isn't it interesting that the Bank of England, for example, is a private, institution which controls the production and printing of the currencies? And I believe, excuse me if I'm wrong, I don't like the word believe. I am convinced that you still have the Queen on your notes, do you?
Oh, absolutely. She's her face appears on the most notes and coins throughout history, the Queen Elizabeth II. And they try to downplay this in Canada here, saying we got our independence and the Queen came here and signed documents and all this stuff. But that's malarkey, big time. I know how it's connected throughout the world. As well, in England, it's the stronghold for worldwide Freemasonry. You have London, the city of London, which is a separate state entirely. You have the bank there. You have the headquarters for World Masonry, and the Queen is apparently the grandmother or the mother of all worldwide Freemasonry. I think she's a mother.
Well, patriarch is the best word to use.
Yeah, but
because from her spawns the Order of the Garter, which includes only any time 13 members of the top aristocratic elite of Europe. And to it's a big deal if you get involved in that. These are Satanists.
Yeah.
I mean, the best person to go to there is, of course, Chris Everard at Enigma Television. He's done some brilliant investigations into this. But what the problem for the modern mind and younger people today, or just generally the public, is that for them it seems like these are quaint, fuddy-duddies, but they're harmless, in the respect that they don't actually do anything. They are completely wrong, because if you look at the directors of the major surviving banks after 2008, all the bailed out banks, you'll find on their board of directors, and it's like a revolving chair, you will find Sir, Lord, and Marquis, and so on. I mean, these people still wield huge influence. And you've got to link up the Freemasons, which in actual fact started off as the Masons as a group during the 1400s in Italy, was in actual fact what it sounds like, Masons. These were people involved in skills like architecture, involved in building, road, building, etc., infrastructure, basically. And the Masons were a group of just professional, it's like a union in a way, but it was quickly infiltrated by people connected with the Vatican and by people connected with the banking system. The same way as if you look at the United States trade union movement during the 50s, 60s and 70s was basically overtaken by the outside. They no longer represent workers. I mean, you look at the Jimmy Hoffa case and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious that they say that the royal family have no power.
She owns 2/3 of Canada.
Well, they're one of the biggest landowners in the UK, obviously, and they own a sixth of the world. BP Oil is still the royal family's. They just changed the name. But it's funny how you mentioned the Bank of England, Tommy, because there was a documentary not long back where they actually got access to the Bank of England vaults. It was a documentary about gold. It was just about the metal itself. But they got access to the Bank of England vaults. Went through, and there's thousands and thousands of bars of gold. And the documentary maker that asked, "Whose is this gold?" "Oh, that's the Queen's."
Yeah, and I seen a report. I think it was in a documentary or something, where they said that the Queen doesn't have much money, that she's really broke, and they're suffering, especially in more recent years, that they don't have this claim to this massive fortune, but they're obviously going to hide that fact. You know what I mean?
They hide all the assets.
Yeah.
And there was a news story recently saying that the Queen was down to her last £1 million. It's like it's some Victorian novel. Please, sir, more.
Yet she's on all the coins and bills in Canada and other countries around the world. And I was just watched a film too. You just have to excuse me for a moment because I can't remember the name of this island. It's just off the coast of Argentina, and the Argentinas went and reclaimed that island. The Falkland?
Yeah, the Falkland Islands, yeah.
Yeah, the Falkland Islands. And
it should be called the Malvinas.
Yeah, exactly. And the Argentinas went to that island and dispelled the United Kingdom's guards that were there, but the Queen sent an army over there to reclaim the island because...
Yeah, well, that was Thatcher's greatest moment. The thing here, Mark, you have to understand, the Malvinas was a setup. That was a deliberate provocation against the Argentines because of the oil that is potentially around, and BP and Royal Dutch, notice Royal Dutch Shell, wanted to protect the I think it's 30-mile or 300-mile something sea. You have this law around any piece of land that you own. It has a 300-mile limit within which it becomes part of your sovereign territory. Gives you, of course, the exclusive drilling rights for that particular area. Now, the provocation against the Argentinians was very, very deliberate by incorporating it forever as a sovereign part of the British Isles. The Argentinians reacted as they would, invaded the island, and of course, Thatcher used this to, at the time before, just before, Tom will know about this. He talks with his older people in the generation of the coal mining strike. At that time, Thatcher was so unpopular that she probably would have only served one term. But the Malvinas or the Falkland Island thing changed all of that and shot her into prominence, and also aroused, of course, the patriotic fervor of the British bulldog, and gave her the excuse to not only send out our military on a crazy mission to retake the Falkland Islands, but she became the icon. That's when she got it was firmly embedded after that. They didn't call her Margaret Thatcher anymore. They called her the Iron Lady.
Yeah, she was one of the biggest psychopaths to ever run the UK.
I seen when she died recently, I seen there was celebrations in the streets over there.
Well, yeah, I live in the north. Tommy lives in the south, but I'm actually from a coal mining town. And basically Thatcher declared war on the working man. She declared war on the coal mines because they were highly unionized and had power over the government. If the unions from the coal mines came out, then there was blackouts across the country. There was no electricity because they couldn't feed the power stations. But she set up the miners in 1984 for a strike. She purposely built up a big reserve of coal for power stations, and then provoked the miners into a strike by saying we're going to close so many coal mines. And they went on a year-long strike, which actually ended up in defeat, and then the closure of all the coal mines in the UK. So she's absolutely despised in my area of the country. And
may I add something to that, Tom? This is something that is often overlooked by people, and this is wherever you are, whichever country, is not that just that she destroyed the coal mining industry per se, but what they were attacking more on a more fundamental level was the whole idea of the unified family, the idea that your son would, because coal mining, a lot of people have still got this sort of Dickensian idea, Dickensian idea, where you've got this little man with a pickaxe crawling through a tunnel with a gas lamp attached to his head, you know. That's not what coal mining in today's world is. Today's coal mining is a highly skilled professional industry which requires extremely intelligent people, and involves technology of the best form. And they also wanted to destroy that soul in the north of England of people who said, okay, I was a coal miner, but son, you'll be an engineer working on constructing the new technologies for getting out coal, creating clean burning coal plants, which is perfectly possible today, and demoralizing, I would suggest, a greater part of the north of England.
Yeah, it's a highly skilled profession, and we had a very strong community because of it. Because the coal miners used to pay for sports halls, used to pay for a colliery band, and various other things that propped up the community. But it was strong because it was so dangerous as well. It was just as dangerous as joining the army. It was basically a choice once over during the Second World War. It was either join the army or go down the mines, because it was an equal danger of dying because of collapses in the mine. But Thatcher herself actually said that community and society didn't exist because she wanted to destroy it. But during that strike, we actually saw what government was capable of, how they turned the media against the working man. If you talk to any miner from the time, they'll tell you that a lot of those police officers weren't police officers. A lot of them were soldiers. And it's coming out in the press now that, she wrote that we might be using troops on the streets soon. So, but if you talk to any money, like I say, they will say some of those police officers weren't police officers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tom, didn't you also mention to me on a radio program about 3 months ago that she had a slogan that was something like "the working man is our real enemy" or something?
That's why we called the enemy within radio.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because the Thatcher called the miners and their families the enemy within.
The ones that are the miners must be providing your country with some sort of national income from the resource. So that's absurd, right?
Mark, today with fourth generation nuclear energy and with clean coal, we could become basically an energy independent island. There's no reason why we are held hostage to the European Union and the supplies of energy.
It's money.
Outside.
They don't want to lose their profits. That's for sure.
Well, it's not. This is the point again. There's something that I think that most people still do not understand. This is deliberate. This is not a policy for money. This is a policy to wipe out the intellectual middle class and aspiring middle class, and also to keep the social dependent part of society, which is expanding incredibly over the last 3 decades, in a position where they no longer are able to have any form of upward mobility in regard to bettering their children's future. And I mean this sincerely. They have a plan, and if you read these guys, they are very, very concrete about it. They want to wipe out the what I would call the middle class of nation states worldwide, and so that you will have only an elite, and what will be left is a dependent society. And this is a program for mass murder, the likes of which Adolf Hitler or Stalin couldn't imagine.
Absolutely. And you see this happening, also the depopulation agenda that they have throughout the world, where they're trying to reduce the world's population. Also, what really goes into play here as well is technological unemployment. Throughout the world, we're seeing machines taking over the jobs of men and women, and when we live in a financial state where we require money to survive, to pay our bills, and then those prices are increasing, the inflation is just through the roof, you're not being able to make enough to, have a little bit of extra money for leisure, for hobbies, for entertainment, for anything like that. All your money is going into these companies' pockets, food, hydro, electricity, all that stuff. But there's machines that are replacing jobs everywhere, which is also part of their agenda.
Absolutely.
Hang on a minute, Tommy.
Sorry.
Yeah, and people actually called Alex Jones a kook for various things. But before last year's Bilderberg convention, he actually said what the convention was about. It was about the Google takeover and the takeover and merge with robotics. And what we've seen recently, Google has bought out every high-profile robotics firm possible. They've bought out all the DARPA, Boston Dynamics,
MIT.
MIT, yeah.
So we're basically looking at Skynet coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And RoboCop is hitting theaters next month, February.
Yeah.
It's the remake of that. That is about mixing human bodies with robotic bodies to prolong life. And you also have cryogenics, there's a lot of people that had their heads severed off, celebrities and elitists like Disney and Timothy Leary and stuff. They had their heads severed off and cryogenically preserved so that when we do come across the technology and it's in play where we can put our brains into robots, then we could live forever, essentially.
Yeah, some people have full body preservation, and some people have just the head because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
But without the fun of it, the society that these people are talking about can only sustain an elite of about 250,000. That's 250,000. That's the elite. Underneath that, they estimate that of so-called human workers, that their figures vary from 500 million worldwide to 1 billion. And I suppose the extra 500 million would be on the outskirts, living in places like the jungles of Brazil and the outer skirts of Siberia, so of no consequence but could be used. But this type of utopian fantasy world, which is based on a very, very evil motivation, which is the destruction of the individual creative soul. And if we take that out of the equation, we can't understand why the attack on the middle class as being upwardly mobile. What I mean by upwardly mobile is not going to work for a bank in the city. What I mean by upwardly mobile is we're talking about the amount of individuals who can contribute through their knowledge and, let's say, their ability to leap in their mind to create a new idea, a new concept. They despise the idea of mobility from what they would call us, that is the scum. We are the lower epsilons in Brave New World. We are the, we're not allowed to move from one level to another through our creative individual ability. That is what they want to crush. And by doing that, they are actually crushing what they consider to be the human spirit, which has always been a threat to superstition, oligarchism, the whole idea of the cult worshipping satanic rituals, which are expressed through the Order of the Garter, the Illuminati, as they now have been identified, or simply you could just say the New World Order. It is the crushing of the human spirit.
Absolutely. Creationism, expression, all that stuff. They want us to be obedient robots, living life by the textbook, which is also why they alter history. They write our history books and teach it in our schools so that our children are indoctrinated to these false realities, fictional realities that they've created. And a lot of...
Well, look, what is the biggest... We're on the brink of thermonuclear confrontation worldwide in China, spreading across through the Eurasian heartland into Russia and right the way down to the Middle East. Now, what is the biggest story in the United States and hitting the headlines day by day? It is whether or not a guy called Justin Bieber, or Bibi, or Bibla. Bibla. Yeah, okay, this guy, and whether or not he's wearing a diaper that's full of the various stuff that came out of his ass yesterday. I mean, the guy is of no significant interest, and yet
Absolutely.
You've got people hypnotized. And you remember Tom?
He's actually from Canada, right from the same province as I am, and we get that in our media too. Justin Bieber, what did he eat today? What did he do last night?
Well,
it's absurd.
We had a lot of jokes on our Enemy Within radio program during the summer about Smiley Miley.
Yeah.
Whether or not she was, screwing a donkey on a stage or whatever, I mean, this is bread and circuses. This is keeping the massives before the FEMA camps and the Auschwitzes are put into place, before the roundups, the mass rioting, the wiping out of the culture and civilization. They're going to dumb most of us down. And by the way, when you talk about, dumbing down, there are a certain amount of people that they really honestly don't need. And so mass extermination, whether it's biological weapons or whether it is, let's say, FEMA camp type operations, it doesn't really matter. We are what they would call excess population.
Yeah, and you were correct and totally nail on the head when you said, Tommy, it's about killing the individual, because there's nothing more dangerous to government than the individual. So what we're trying to do is collectivize people by feeding them this bull through the media of Justin Bieber, of Miley Cyrus, and or just to get people into collectives and destroy their brains, as well as all the stuff we're getting through GMO foods and
Absolutely.
fluoride in the water and various other methods of just destroying our brain as an individual. Because, like I said, the innovation and the possibilities from one individual human,
It's incredible.
it's incredible. But a collective of dummies, it's no threat.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
That's why I say often that until we understand the cultural war that is going on, as well as the actual physical reality. Look, everybody in the Western world who is awake has come to the conclusion that their wage packet is worth less today than it was, let's say, 2008. It's declined by approximately 30% in your buying power. Now, most people know that. Don't know why, but that's on the physical level. But have a look at what is happening to our children. I've got hanging on my wall a headline from the Daily Mail from the summer, and I always look at it every day. It's a girl called Hannah who was 14 years old, and because of her obsession with Facebook and being bullied online, she killed herself. And I've got a picture of her, and there is a beautiful 14-year-old girl with that could be my daughter at that time, you know. And I look at it and I see how many of these are going on day by day. But it's not only the ones that commit suicide. How about the amount of them that are caught up in the nihilistic, non-future, non-thinking? If you talk with most of these people, you know, in her age group, where if you can get them off their mobile phone for just 5 minutes, I'm going to be a model. I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to meet, you know, Smiley Biley and get up her bum and I'll show my tits for 100,000. You know, it's just sick, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
And it's wrong.
absolutely.
We
And
are being dumbed down.
you are right, though. If you ask any average 14-year-old out there what they're into, what they're interested in, a lot of them would say going to the mall, shopping, Justin Bieber, music, Facebook, watching YouTube, cell phone, video games, Xbox.
Well, look, I have this, well, I don't know, Tom and I, we have a little bit of a, you know, to and fro on this one. And that is this. Look, a part of MK Ultra, which was the CIA program for brainwashing techniques used on individuals during the period from, well, basically the early 60s, and a lot of it financed through CIA operatives, was not just the LSD experiment. Yeah, it wasn't just that. It was the whole tradition of changing people away from classical music, classical literature, and pumping out, well, garbage, basically, repetitive, nonsensical rubbish, which created instant stardom. And you see that accelerating during the 60s. That was one of the cornerstones of MK Ultra.
Yeah, total mind control.
Yeah.
And they use psychic driving techniques. Dr. Ewan Cameron here in Canada, in Montreal, at the at an institute there, as well as there's evidence supporting that Joseph Mengele was working with that program in Canada here. He's been, there's pictures of him from psychiatric institutions here, and then you have during that same period of time the Duplessis orphans tragedy here in Canada, which was where they were taking children from foster homes, Catholic children, single mothers would have 3 or 4 children and they wouldn't have a father. So the church said that's unacceptable. They would take these children away from their parents, put them into schools, and then they were beaten, abused, and many of them were subjected to MKUltra experimentation, as well as experimental tests that they were doing to see reaction of children, especially when you're raising them from a very young age and indoctrinating them to a certain set of rules and viewpoints so that their mental development was to a certain extent where they could control it, or they only knew certain things. But you also had you have a lot of these orphans that are just dying off now. The last ones are just dying off now, but a lot of these testimonies that they gave were just horrendous, what they went through, and that was all supported by the federal government.
Mark, you might be surprised that they did exactly the same thing in Ireland, South Ireland.
Have you seen the radiation tests they did on foster kids as well, Mark?
I know that they did that with to Native American children in the western part of Canada and the northern part. They were doing, when they first introduced the X-rays, they were overexposing these children to X-rays to give them cancer and to render them essentially sterile, so they wouldn't be able to have children and stuff.
It went far beyond that in the US. There's actually a documentary called, I think it's called Hole in the Head. And there's a guy in his 60s, 70s now, with a hole in his head, literally. And he's telling the story of how they tested radiation in these chairs, basically like an electric chair, but it was a radiation chair where they just put a ball on the head. And he said this nurse just was keep cranking it up. And he said, I just heard the other nurse say, I think you've given him too much. And then he just takes his hat off. You can actually see the trailer for it on YouTube if you just look for Hole in the Head radiation test or something like that.
Yeah.
It'll come up and he just shows it, and it's just horrifying to see.
Yeah. Again, you see, I'm sorry I have to keep doing this, but for the listeners, the average listener out there, they will say, yeah, but these are, sort of like maybe only 10,000 or 100,000 people used in these experiments. It's nothing to do with me. They are wrong. The results of all of this experimentation have been used on a broader and broader scale. Look, when you look at the average IQ, and I'm not using IQ because I'm not so much into the IQ. I always think that the essence of intelligence comes burning through the soul of the human individual in the search for individual freedom. But if you just simply take IQ levels in countries like England, the United States, the amount of people that I'm running into who are unable to communicate. By the way, our radio program would be too highbrow for them to understand because they don't ever come in contact with this type of conversation.
Yeah, you've been seeing, actually, Tommy, people coming in your house when you're playing about the radio show, and they're saying, what Tom's saying can't be right. That can't be right.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, they are amazed that there is another person on the British Isles. LaRouche once made a really great joke with me. I was in Wiesbaden and I was forced by Joe Cohen to go over and meet LaRouche. I didn't have really anything to say. But anyway, he heard that I came out of the Copenhagen network, and he said to me, do you know how England was created? I said, I knew he was going to be doing something funny with this because it was like too stupid a question. So I said, no, all right. So he said, it was 2 French fishermen got drunk one day, floated over the channel and landed on the shores of England and opened a pub. And he said to me, by the way, we've got a solution for the English problem, the British imperial problem. I said, what's that, Lynn? He said, well, at the bottom of Loch Ness, there's a plug. There's a huge plug. All you have to do is pull it out and then the whole thing will sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what he was indicating on a more, I know that it's humorous, but on a more fundamental level, is that there are centers in the world of intellectual degeneracy and an Aristotelian world outlook, which is they look at the average Joe on the street, and they think of them as, you know, the result of what happens when you deny people the chance to read classical literature, to listen to classical music, to involve yourself in scientific studies and the beauty and of this universe and the wonder of the deep seas. And you know, I mean, the amount of beauty that is in this world is all being, you know, focused into whether or not what's his name, Mr. I shat in my pants, what's his name, Joe, what's his name, Bieber?
Yeah.
Justin Bieber. Yeah. Okay, they focus all of the attention of young people into increasingly bizarre cult worshipping. Do you remember, Tom, in the summer on our radio program, I described about something called One Direction?
One Direction, yeah.
That's it. I finally got it right. Hey! Okay. There was the girl who killed her animal. She had a little chihuahua, and because One Direction wouldn't answer, obviously they don't, her Facebook plea for help, or
Twitter message, yeah.
Yeah, and it cut off the head of her own dog.
Yeah, she said if I don't get a message back off One Direction, I'm going to cut the head off the dog. And then they didn't tweet back, obviously, because, you know, there's 1 million following them, or 2 million or whatever. But then she cut off the head of the dog. It's just this ludicrous reality that a lot of the youth are actually living in.
Yeah, it's the movies, the music that's presented. Like, as much as I love heavy metal music, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the music style and the playing style. I'm even in a couple bands myself. But if you look at the way plants react to music, there was tests done by CIA members on plants, as well as other independence tests, but they played classical music to plants, and they would flourish and grow. They played metal music in the other one, and the plants died and withered. So, and they're putting all this music out there right now that it's just killing.
Hang on a minute.
What's he doing to you?
Sorry.
And this is where Tom and I,
Yes,
you know, fuddy-duddy.
Exactly. This is where me and Tommy actually massively disagree, because he always talks about how video games and how music control society, but I think it's been
I didn't say that. It's a third of it.
Yeah, but it's been debated for decades, and it's been disproven many times. And
Has it?
Yes, and
how comes the IQ? How comes the IQ?
Hang on. But I always point out that Japan has the most violent video games, the most violent movies, and they have the lowest crime rate. So I think it's a culture thing overall, which causes a problem. And I think, especially in America, I think that a major problem is the drugged up society through the pharmaceuticals being so easily available.
Don't take away my little blue blanket. Don't take away my...
Yeah, it is up to the person who's actually perceiving the information to act like that. It was the girl's choice to cut the head off her chihuahua, but you can't exactly say that with definitive proof that it's the music that made her do that, or that it was a movie she watched or something. It does. It's just like the gun argument, right? It's not the gun that's killing people. It's the mind, the thought to pull the trigger.
Right. The cultural matrix within which we are living is a definite controlled cultural matrix. And within that matrix, other things or insane things are more possible to happen. When what you are doing is with the recent flood of movies, I think it started with Terminator, but ever since then, or you could even go back to Thunderbolt, and you will see that the more, this is not entertainment, this is conditioning.
Yeah, it definitely influences people to do these things. Definitely, I will give it that. And if you have a weak mind, then you're more susceptible to doing something violent, or, you know.
But why would a weak mind? It's because it's generational, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your parents would have had a stronger mind. You might have a weaker mind, but what is going to happen to the next generation that only grew up in that? And by the way, we don't have enough time for all of this, because basically there is a tipping point in the history of humanity which creates a blowout. There's an inbuilt clause where collapse doesn't. It starts slow. It's like the way in which a snowball runs down. If you start with a small snowball and you run it down a mountainside, at the end it suddenly becomes a huge, and when it explodes, it takes everything down with it. And that's where we are in 2014. We are at that point.
We're heading for a major collapse in, if not next year, the year after, and the longer it takes to happen, the bigger the implosion it's going to be.
And the less that people, because of the ongoing propaganda and the brainwashing of the people generally, when it happens, they will be less prepared for how to deal with it.
Yeah, we're being fed this line in the UK, and they're being fed the same line in the US, that everything's picking up, there's growth in society. Well, obviously there's growth because you're pumping the economy full of fake money. You're just printing money every day. People are moving off jobs, they're moving off welfare and going actually on sickness benefits, on sickness social security, so they're off the figures now, so the job rates look like they're up. It's just these falsified figures that they're pumping out.
And if you do get a job, I mean, who really wants to flip hamburgers from McDonald's?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing that problem too. A lot of people I know are getting out of university and college after spending $40,000-$50,000 on 3-4 years of education, and they have to pay off this debt. But the only job they can get when they get out is flipping burgers or working at a call center or Tim Hortons or a coffee shop, because there's no.
That's exactly the same here in England.
Yeah.
I've got one-on-one experience with people who are fascinated with your information and with Tom's information, and sometimes they even listen to me. And the point is that they are youngsters who still have a vibrant interest in learning things, but they are under such extreme peer pressure, etc. And when they do get through their degree, when they get their degree or whatever it might be, their piece of paper, you are right, they end up with meaningless. Well, you don't need to go to university to know how to work at a call center, do you?
Yeah,
No.
I left school in 1998, and all of my friends who went through, a lot of my friends who went through university had the same story. They came out of university. The one girl I knew, she had a sports degree. That's what she lived for. It was sports and fitness. She was going to become a sports instructor or whatever. Now she's working in the call center.
Yeah.
And that's what she lived for. It killed her whole drive. That's what her whole drive. She was a fitness instructor. She just didn't have the job. And then there's various other people who have trained up, and they're just in meaningless jobs. I mean, there was one girl. She got straight A's from school, and she went through university, and then she's serving people behind a bar now.
Yeah. And you know what? There is also involved in this another thing, which is the corruption of the human soul again, which is cronyism. And that is the offering of people who are fitted into the group or the social structure, or if your father or mother has connections, you get a job even if you're a dildo.
Yeah, that's the way it works for Masonry as well. Your father, son, etc.
Absolutely, which is one of the reasons why the so-called ruling elite over the last 100 years have degenerated to the point where our Prime Minister in England, David Cameron, call me Dave, he thinks that polar bears can't swim.
Yeah, that's one thing is it huge over there as much as it is here? Kate and the Prince and all.
Yeah. It's a cult here.
Constant barrage of media just crap especially through the tabloids of the royal baby, the royal family. I was going to mention earlier, actually, it's such a ludicrous thing in the 21st century for, especially in other countries, to see heads of state like that, just because they're born into this and they wear a fur coat and a funny crown, somehow they are more powerful, they're better than other people. And that's basically why America was created in the first place, to get rid of, to fight against everything we were in the UK, and then build something a lot better, in which it was, and now was being destroyed.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, Tom, I said that you've got to remember that the British Isles is an occupied territory from the Venetians, and now we are, under our name, the occupation of the United States is the crucial, let's say, the punctum Gonzales, meaning the focal point of the operation of all the oligarchical networks throughout Europe, and that includes elements of the Vatican, etc., to finally, let's say, extinguish the spark of humanity on this planet.
Yeah, and basically in the UK, you're living under the biggest surveillance grid in the world, especially in London, and it's the biggest nanny state in the world.
I also hear that it's also the most fluoridated place in the world for water fluoridation.
I don't know.
It is in areas. It's not actually that bad. It's not fluoridated where I live, but I think it is fluoridated down where Tommy lives. But
Isn't it one of the only places in Europe that is fluoridated?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, we have a problem down here because London spills out into the community around. So London, although it is only officially about 8 million, if you look at Greater London, you're talking 25 million. And the spill-off from that, it's the most densely populated area, I think, nearly on the planet. And the thing about that is that our water is pretty crappy anyway. It's hard water rather than soft water. And in order to keep it, they used to just put a little bit of chlorine in it and so on. But gradually over the years, when I came out of hospital, and I haven't been living in England for quite some years, yeah, and I came out of hospital and I was living in a place called Hastings, where the Battle of Hastings happened in 1066. The water coming out of the tap actually smells. It stinks of chemicals. It's not a joke. You can smell it. You just turn on. You can smell it in another room when the tap is running. That's how bad it is.
We had a contractor came into the place where I work, and he'd been working in Sweden for some time, and then he came over to the UK. He was working in London, and around London somewhere, and then he came up to the place where I work in the north. And he said that the water was so pure in Sweden, it was unbelievable getting shower and drinking the water. But when he came over here, his skin was actually hemorrhaging, bleeding from his skin. He was showing the scars and everything, man.
Yep. It is that bad, especially as you go closer towards the city centre.
It's the change of the water, especially from totally pure to fluoridated, chemicalized water. Well, I mean, I only drink bottled water now, and especially in the kettle in it for tea and coffee. But if you actually, I'd tell this to anybody: if you drink bottled water, nothing but bottled water for a week, and then try the water out of your tap,
you are right.
You will just taste straight chemicals.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Exactly, because you see, most of the people around me are accustomed to drinking tap water, so they don't notice it.
It's the same with organic food versus
absolutely
normal fruit and vegetables in the supermarket. If you're constantly eating it, you won't notice the difference. But if you go into organic for a week and then you go back, you go, Jesus, what is this?
Yeah.
Tastes like plastic.
Mark,
Yeah.
Mark, you had a few questions that I thought you wanted to ask Tom and I. So please, get to what you wanted to ask us. I think we've introduced ourselves. We're radical lunatics.
Oh, it's good so far. I think we definitely covered a few topics that I really wanted to get your opinion about, as well as information about your show and stuff. But you sent me a package uh, I guess it was a few weeks ago, Tommy, and it had some flyers in it as well as a card and stuff about LaRouche Pack, which is
Yeah.
something that you've been a member of, and also there's a lot of Infowars information on there and links and stuff like that. Are you guys like linked with or affiliated with Infowars, or what's your relationship there?
Basically, what we've been trying to do at Enemy Within Radio is stop the infighting. One of the major problems within truth organizations at the minute is infighting between groups and
Yeah.
people calling each other shills and just ludicrous accusations against each other. So what we're trying to do is join up as many people as we can and just get them talking. That's all we want. It's just people talk to each other, go on each other's shows, and so we promote everybody else, and we hope they promote us. That's all it's about.
Yeah. And as regards your question about me, Mark, I go back to 1978. I was in Denmark at the time, and I was, 17, 18 years old, looking for a reason to live. And it was by chance that I came across the European Labour Party, which was the political arm of the LaRouche organization in Europe, and the Executive Intelligence Review. And I spent 5 years basically as a street organizer. And I also did, of course, as I matured, I did a lot of sort of background research into what was going on in the Scandinavian arena, and some of my observations were used in their publications. But the problem was that I reached a point where the stress, because of the it was basically a war on the streets at that time, because this was the time when the Soviet Union really began to crumble, and there were a lot of desperate maneuvers by the Kremlin towards a potential invasion into Western Europe in order to somehow prop up this Soviet system. Things were very dangerous. The streets were very dangerous. I've got scars, a lot of scars, physical, from street battles between, the Green Movement, which was sponsored in part equally by not only the World Wildlife Fund and the British monarchy, the same people behind Bilderberg, but also networks inside the Soviet Union who saw it as a way in which to co-opt the Greenies into what you would call anarchist, communist networks of street dumbos who just, they were wild times. At that time, you talked with Ola Damgård on your program a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was the same period of time when in 1986 was the last death throw of the political arm of the Executive Intelligence Review and the LaRouche organization, and then became the Schiller Institute, which is now run basically by Helga Zepp LaRouche, Lyndon LaRouche's wife. Now, I got out in 85, basically, after just the pressure was too much. Being threatened every day was just too much to endure. And so I became a little bit of what would you call it, a dropout for a couple of years. And I lived a life of just, trying to just forget that the world was going into hell and just taking what I could out of it. But of course, the conscience pricks, yeah? And eventually, of course, I couldn't live the life of, just constantly parties, and you have to obliterate your mind, because once you know these things, you can never turn your back on it. You can do it for a certain period, You can't do it for a longer period. So I ended up, of course, going into the East Bloc, and there I set up my own sort of effort, which led me to incredible adventures and incredible meetings with very, very beautiful people right the way through the East. And now what I am doing, you see, I actually got in contact with Tom on the basis that I was just going to, do one interview with him. But we clicked so easily, understood each other so easily, that Enemy Within has become part of my platform in order to speak to as many people as possible. Because without Tom, of course, I would probably have never got to have heard about you see.
It's quite hilarious. Well, twice a week run, but I'll have my news stories, he'll have his, but we'll both be talking about the same thing. it's like he calls it a cosmic connection, but it's just weird how we run into the same things.
Yeah, that's cool that you guys work together. It must be also helpful to have two people on the show just to have different perspectives, and it also makes it more interesting in a way as well.
We bounce off each other, and the thing is, Mark, we'd love to also, get your perspective, and to also, if possible, because the more the merrier in this respect, in order to bring in different guest speakers showing the situation in various parts of the world, so that we are not just limited to. We have something here in the United Kingdom called the UK column, which is very fixated on the British Isles, and is quite a stiff setup. In other words, it's not very free-flowing. Whereas what Tom and I want to do over the coming period is to have dialogues with, and even trialogues or quadrilogues. You have those? Yeah, with people, and gradually consolidate these networks of just people speaking their mind on what we see happening around us, and using the research, perhaps not in depth, but their research and their goodwill, and to broadcast it to more people so that they say, well, look, I'm not alone by thinking that the situation is a little bit crazy at the moment.
Yeah, there's too many alternative news sources which are just closed off. They're very closed off. This is our news. We don't want interaction with any other groups. And we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to hook up with as many groups as we can, get their perspective. We're telling them ours, and then we promote them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They promote us. Who cares,
Yeah, like I actually started a group called the World Public Union, and that was back in 2011. And that was for the same reasons as what you're starting, is to connect groups, to connect these alternative media places, and to address the problems, not only to address them and provide information and links to places they could go to get information, but also to provide solutions or attempt to make solutions by merging different groups, etc.
That was the best thing about Bilderberg 2013. That's what everybody who I met there got the same thing, that they met up with all the different groups across the country. I was amazed how many different groups there was. And afterwards, it was months later, I realized, hang on a minute, that's them guys at Bilderberg. That's them guys at Bilderberg's. So we've met up with the guys from Glasgow Underground Radio. They were on Truth Frequency Radio with us. But there's various other groups that we met up. We would have never known about these groups. I would have never known Tommy if it wasn't for Bilderberg 2013. So
yeah, I know you wish it never happened.
So it was great that the elites decided to go there. But what I wanted to mention earlier is that I wouldn't be surprised if they actually had the Bilderberg convention back to back in the same place in Watford, because it was so secure for them. We were nowhere near the hotel. It's never been that secure in any location anywhere.
We also note that Google held a conference 1 week and 1 week after. So there was a 3 week conference, sort of background hum, which came out of all the internet providers and all of the tech boys.
Another thing that I've never mentioned on my show, actually, I think I mentioned it just after Bilderberg, actually, but as I was saying earlier, the We Are in Switzerland was stopping in the same hotel as me, and they had the right idea completely. They thought, well, if these elites are stopping in a hotel, and if I was stopping in a hotel, I wouldn't be just stopping in the hotel, I'd be going out to places. So what they did is they ambushed all these elites in all the 5-star places around Watford.
Oh,
yeah. They actually found them in like spas and everywhere around, but it was amazing what these guys were doing. And these guys were only 17, 18, 19. They were at university over in Switzerland. They were actually, as part of their course, they were sent over to Watford. They were using it as part of their course as evidence, because some of them were doing photography and filmmaking and stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
It was what they did.
And you know what, Mark? That is the reason why I know that I can, with Tom, over the next months, to get you also to, appear on our broadcast here in England, so that we can get other people involved that, can cross the pond, as they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. If you guys want me on the show anytime, I'd definitely be interested in that. Just a warning, though, I've been on a guest on a few shows, and it seems that their shows get disconnected or shut down when I start talking, because I don't know why, but...
That's Tom's program. Problem. Sorry, not mine.
It's okay. We've had Ole Damagard on twice, and it's not been shut down when he talks. So yeah, I don't think it's shut down when you're on.
Yeah, that's good, because I just did one, I guess it was last week, on the Sandy Hook documentary that I did, and... for the first time ever, like they have like Adam Kokesh on this week. They have big guests on the show, and they pay for their slot. They pay for their time slot to use the program to broadcast live. And they had 2,000 listeners on, and they said for the first time ever, their show got shut down. For what reason, I don't know, but they got blocked out of their account. They weren't allowed to access their account for that day, and they pay for it and everything, which I found pretty surprising for sure.
It's a very, very controversial subject when you come to Sandy Hook, and especially the shooting in London. Not the shooting, the
bombs,
the beheading in London.
Oh yeah.
The two controversial subjects, which I actually disagree with, Ole, and probably yourself. I don't think those two were actually conspiracies, in my opinion.
I don't think Sandy Hook had actors. I think that there was actually legitimate children murdered, but I do believe that it was a black operation. I state that in my documentary.
Yeah, and I'm open completely, but at this minute, I don't agree that it was a conspiracy from what I've seen. But I'm always open to anybody's view, and that's what I said. Well, it's great to get your view, and me one day I'll change when the evidence sways in that opinion for me.
I don't know if you watched my film, Tom. It's called Sandy Hook, the documentary. They actually deleted it off YouTube, the full-length version, but it's still up there in 2 parts. But apparently you can't watch number 2 on mobile devices or several other sources. You can only watch it on a PC. But other people have taken the liberty to copy the video and post it online, so it should be on there somewhere. But it's called Sandy Hook, the documentary.
It is getting very interesting with the Sandy Hook thing, because even people that were against it at first, being a conspiracy, like Jason Burmas, he's just posted some stuff recently. There was the police footage when they went inside, and there's a couple of inconsistencies there, which are quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, the one guy who was running away from the school was a tactical officer from another district. He was chased down by the police on the scene. They arrested, they tackled him and put him in the front seat of their police car without handcuffs. So
that's right. I've seen the small footage of that. I think Alex Jones on InfoWars showed a clip of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you have Adam Lanza, just all those pictures that they're showing of him, the more recent ones, they look totally photoshopped, digitalized. Plus his death, like, it's all in my documentary. I recorded this, thankfully, at the time, because I knew they were going to change the internet or change the videos, but his death states that he died the day before, which kind of would go along with them being in the house to kill his mother to set it all up beforehand, prior. So the death report,
where was that listed? Was that an actual death report?
I recorded it, and it was on the official website for death reports, for death certificates, and it's all in that documentary, the video that I took and everything. But then, funny thing is, right after that, after I posted the film and a little bit after, you go back to the website, and now the date has changed to what the official media is saying that the day he died on. So there's all these discrepancies happening, all these files that were put out, and now they're being retracted or changed online digitally, so that when you go on the internet and look for it yourself, you'll find, oh, okay, this is what the media says, But right when it happened, you got to record everything. You got to get all those news reports right from when it first happens, because they'll change it afterwards. You know what I mean?
You can have a couple of inconsistencies and a couple of mistakes with dates and websites, but when you see so many, it starts to become plain.
Like the website thing, you could change that. I'll admit that you can change the date of a video if you upload it, etc. It's been proven, but there's so many other anomalies with Sandy Hook thing that it's just...
That's why I asked, because there's been a lot of people saying, oh, well, there's these Facebook pages set up. Well, they were set up after, but they've just changed the dates, and that was one.
The more important thing here is, and this is where, again, the Aristotelian mind is at fault. When we go into the details of any particular incident, we could, let's say, as a general consensus, I'm wrong, twice a day, like a clock is right twice a day, even if it's stopped. We can do the same thing with investigations into the various incidents like 9/11. You can go to the 7/7 incident, the Madrid bombings. You can go back to Gladio, Operation Gladio. And within there must be mistakes made even by the most well-intentioned of people, regardless. The overall general situation that we are looking at, which is the one that we should be concerned about, and that is that we are in an economic depression in the Western Hemisphere. We are seeing the dumbing down of our young people. We are seeing our food becoming less and less nutritious. We are seeing poison put into the water system. We are seeing our education system churning out robotic types of Facebook morons. We are seeing the collapse of entertainment worldwide in the respect that it's giving out a negative view of humanity. We are seeing propaganda being spread throughout Western civilization, which nullifies the value of the individual human free-thinking person. I mean, I can go down the list. And if you look at those things in the broader aspect, then we know we are under attack as humanity in the Western world. And this is the most important thing to keep in mind, whether or not we make mistakes along the road in our efforts to awake our friends and family and loved ones to the danger. That's not the point. Sure, I don't know exact day that Bob Kennedy was killed. I don't know the date. I know the one for John, his brother, but I don't know the day. I can't remember the date. Does that mean that the Bob Kennedy assassination is not important in the grander scheme of things? No, it just means I don't know the date.
Yeah, it is getting a bit harder too to figure out good, reliable information when the media is broadcasting false reports or neglecting certain witness accounts. Also, the changing of documents, the withholding of documents. You have all these gag orders that are put in place when these important cases come to court. They put a gag order so that you can't find out the truth, so that everything's kept secret in the courtroom, what they discuss, the videos they show, the evidence they show. So that's why people are also questioning these things so much more now, is because we're not being told, we're being lied to, or we're just left in the dark to figure it out on our own. So it is good that there is people that are independently investigating these things and coming and trying to get the information out there, because In my opinion, the mainstream media doesn't do their job very well. They just rebroadcast or re-spew something that's been sent over to them in a desk in a paragraph saying, here's your report for the day, this is what you got to say, and they pretty much read it from a screen.
Of course they do. This is a very great shame about the media in general, is that over the, basically I would suggest since Nixon's scandal when he had
Watergate.
to resign, the Watergate thing, but that was probably one of the last times that you saw, it was the beginning of the end of investigative journalism.
Well,
They don't like people who are independent, investigating and following, their nose. They don't like that.
Yeah, it was the end of the mainstream investigative journalist.
That's what I meant, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've still got great work by probably one of the only mainstream, well, even he's alternative investigative journalist, Greg Palast. I've read all of his books. I suggest everybody checks out his work because he's the last of the great official investigative journalists. But like we said, that there's a lot of alternative investigative journalists taking over the role that's been left by the media.
Yeah.
Well, this is the reason why, if you look at the big picture, instead of getting fixated on any particular incident, but have a look at it in the general terms, we know where it's going. All of these things can be linked into the general malaise and anti-intellectualism that we see around us. I mean, Tom, you told me, what was it, a month ago or 2 months ago, on a radio show, I don't know if it was True Frequency, where you mentioned that your friends said to you, oh, what's the conspiracy today, Tom? And you said, oh, I just read the newspaper.
Yeah, it's a regular question. What's the conspiracy today, Tom? And I'm saying, what do you mean, the news? Because it's a conspiracy now if you read more than one newspaper. because it's not in their tabloid. Because a lot of people, a lot of working people, just live in this reality of reading one tabloid every day, and if it's not in there and it's not on Sky News, then it doesn't exist. So anything else is a conspiracy. So what's a conspiracy today? Well, in the Guardian, is this in the Telegraph? It's just a ludicrous reality.
Yeah, this is the reason why, one of the great things we could do is to link up with Mark, and we've already got Truth Frequency and Chris Geo over there in the States, and that is to link up with us and get a sort of cross-channel communications between the various radio shows, where we perhaps once a week have just an hour, where we share what we've learned from our different perspectives over the week's major news. And you'd be surprised how interesting the conversation will be.
Yeah, definitely. There's different news produced in different areas of the world, definitely. Some get more play than others, for sure. And it does...
Absolutely.
It is good to look at things from different perspectives as well, because if you're going at it one-sided, you're going to miss the other dimensions of the situation and lose out.
Well, a lot of people, you have to admit, in Great Britain, that one of the things that Tom and I, it's the biggest uphill struggle I think that we have here, is not the moronic following of football and stuff like that, but it is this automatic response towards the propaganda that surrounds the monarchy. Now, we had a year ago, when I was dead, we had the Jimmy Savile scandal. I don't know if Canada covered this very much.
Yeah, Jimmy Savile was a pedophile, and they also have that island there. What's that island called?
Sorry, that'll have to be Tom's area. I was dead.
It was the island the hospital was on.
Yes, they found children's remains in the hospital. I have it here. Just let me check quick.
No, Tom's also doing the same.
Not doing
I
this.
can hear you both clicking away.
Powerful Google.
I missed this on another broadcast too. Forgot the
You see
name
what
of the
I mean
island.
about the people forget details, and it's not so important. But yeah, check it out. And let's get it out to the listeners so they can check it as well.
Yeah, because I believe that this is linked with Jimmy Savile. In some way or another, it has to be linked with him. The island is basically a Masonic island, and they have their own laws and legislations there, and it's a royal island.
Is this a channel island?
Yeah, it's Channel Island, yeah.
Which one? Sark or Guernsey or Jersey?
Jersey. There it is, Jersey.
Yeah, it would be.
That's what I said. I said Jersey as well. I was spot on.
Yeah, you're right. Jersey Island. That's scary there, you know.
Yeah, the important thing to understand here is that the Jimmy Savile thing is front page news for nearly months. I was dead at the time when this was happening. So I really, honestly, I was just so away. But I noticed that we had it nearly every day while I was recovering in hospital. And it was on the tabloids. It was everywhere, Tom, wasn't it?
And you're talking hundreds of abuses. You're talking 200, 300 who were actually reported now. Abuses by this guy. And the local police officers, too, who lived local, they said that there wasn't a police officer in the town that didn't know what he was up to. But he had so much control over the media. He had through his relationship with Margaret Thatcher, as I mentioned earlier, the royal family. And the royal family have never been questioned about.
Exactly, Tom. That was the point I was trying to make when I opened this Pandora's box. And what I was trying to explain to Mark is, Mark, one of the biggest uphill struggles we have is you can have the scandal on the front pages of nearly every newspaper, including, of course, serious newspapers, and yet it stops when it gets to any connection to the monarchy.
Yeah. And at the time when he was actually doing these abuses, we had a newspaper called the News of the World, which would print any gossip on any celebrity, even if it wasn't true. It was on the front page of the News of the World. And Jimmy Savile, he never hit that front page. Why? Because he had so much control over the media, through Rupert Murdoch, various sources down the line, but mainly through his relationship with the Prime Minister and Prince Charles and the royal family. He actually spent 10 Christmases with Margaret Thatcher at Chequers.
Yeah, he was definitely connected. Jimmy Savile.
You see, the point that I'm trying to make here is that our biggest problem in England is we've got a new up and coming political movement called the United Kingdom Independence Party, which is, for all intents and purposes, some of the best people in England. These people are honest, hard-working, middle class. They are what I would call the Middle England or the Mittelstand of Germany.
Max Clifford, I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
It was he had control over whatever the press were printing, so he had connections with Rupert Murdoch and obviously the rest of the press. Mm-hmm. But he's been pulled up recently for allegations himself.
Yeah, I know. And then we got Rolf Harris, we got Noel Edmonds, and I don't know how many of these guys.
Not Noel Edmonds. Noel Edmonds.
Sorry.
He's fine.
Who was the other guy then? There was this radio disc joke.
I forgot his name, man. James Lee Travis.
That's the one.
Yeah,
okay. Now, the thing I was trying to put... They don't mind publishing all of that part of the story, but when it gets near Sandringham Palace and the bodies that have been found around the various royal estates, all of a sudden everything is cut off. And you can't get the British population to ever dream that that woman with a bowl of fruit on her head could in actual fact be not a kind, gentle old granny, but in actual fact part of a vast array of powerful people.
Yeah.
You can't get them to understand it. And you know that, Tom. If you attack the monarchy, there is a change. Oh, no, not that far, Tom. We don't mind attacking the celebrities like Jimmy Savile or others, you know, on the outskirts of the network. But when it gets to the point where anybody close to the aristocracy is involved, all of a sudden, oh no. And in actual fact, Tom, you told me about a chief of police who wouldn't investigate a body that was dug up.
Yeah, it's across the board. They won't investigate anything to do with the royal family. It was mentioned actually in the Diana documentary, the unlawful killing. And it said, do you really think that the royal courts, the royal, you know, everything's royal in the UK? She owns the court, she owns the police, she owns the army. So do you really think these people are going to be investigating their own
crimes?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Chris Everett took it up in his documentary, Lady Di.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did a very good job on that, which is probably why he lives in France most of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And there's definitely evidence of connections to the royal family with child abuse, child murder, child ritual sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And you know what? That actually is quite terrifying when you think about. Have you noticed how quickly, since he took office, Obama went grey, haggard, and looks like he's being dragged backwards through a bench, even though he's wearing a Savile Row suit and tie. Yeah. And then have a look at Hillary Clinton. If you look at her during the beginning and at the end nearly of the Clinton presidency, have a look at her today. She looks like a witch.
It's exactly the same thing that happened to Tony Blair.
Yeah. And also...
It's the same transition. It was just a transition into pure evil.
That's what I think. I think that if you have ever been involved in something that is so deep and so dark and so despicable, that's 3 Ds for you.
It definitely is, because it's not with every leader. Jimmy Carter didn't go that way.
No.
There's various presidents you can pin out, and they were okay by the end of the term. But there's just certain leaders, and they're always the ones who are always in power. Like Tony Blair's going through the banks now. He's involved in all warmongering across the world. It's the same characters that just carry on this lifetime of evil.
Yeah. And do you know? Have you noticed that guy Kerry? Yeah, who is also Skull and Bones. I mean, these people are. I'm sorry, mentally ill, if you ask me. He looks like a lizard with his tongue flickering in and out when he's talking.
He does.
I mean, it makes me ill to look at that guy.
Yeah, and then you have the bloodline.
I'm sorry.
You have the bloodlines too, because all of the U.S. presidents were related by blood, with the exception of the one president, the 8th president, and all the others are related by blood. And they're connected to royalty. Their blood ties go into the royal family as well. But one thing is interesting in America and U.S., if you become a president, or you don't have the right to use the term Lord or Sir in America. You can't, even though you're related by blood. If you were in England, you would be considered a Lord or a Sir. But in America, they took that away. I can't remember what legislation they passed, but that was one of the stipulations.
It's in the Constitution.
That's the founding legislation. That's the ridding of the class system. A lot of it. Well, most Americans can't understand that we still have this crazy class system in the UK, where people just look down and look up to people.
Well, you know, putting it again, I've got to go back to the broader aspect. Look, you've got people like Lord Byron, and Percy Shelley, who fled England to get away from their aristocratic families and control. And these people were great thinkers. The fact that you have a bloodline going back to, let's say, King John does not intrinsically make you evil. The question is whether or not you join the fraternity that expresses these types of mindset. And that's where I'm sorry, if you've ever, let's say, drunk the blood of a murdered child, you are insane for the rest of your life. Because if you are anywhere near human, uh, you will have guilt plaguing you, violently horrible dreams, and oh man, I can't imagine what it's like to live in that
Yeah.
type of, you know.
And
I
that's
mean,
probably
this
why
is,
their hair goes white, right?
I'm convinced of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that it does prove is there is a ruling elite across the world, which is carried on through secret societies that to make sure that the same people are in power constantly. The funny thing is actually that Prince Charles and the royal family are actually related to Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually related to Dracula. So when people say royalty are vampires, it's actually true.
Yeah.
And that, really leads you down to the near end of the rabbit hole. And you know what I think is the only pinnacle above it is the high priests who, ever since Babylonia, and well, even Solomon, but Babylon, have always been the actual controllers. Even the kings and queens and monarchs and aristocrats do not actually control the program that they are following. It is the high priests at the top of this satanic. Excuse me, I don't feel very well when I think about it. But all right, at the top, the manipulators of the faces that we see. Diana called them the men in grey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I think we've just depressed everybody. There is good news.
Well, there's
We
yeah, that
Go
kind of
ahead, Mark.
information is very hard to come across and actually find valid evidence and proof of that stuff, which is why I think Chris Everett really did a good job with his research and stuff, because he's really dug deep into the occult side of the royal family and aristocrats and stuff like that. But it is very dark
Yeah,
subject.
and by the way, Mark, have you noticed it's starting to drive him out of his mind as well?
Oh, it can. It can.
Yeah.
I mean, it does sound ludicrous when I say that they're related to Vlad the Impaler, but Prince Charles himself is actually paying for the restoration of the castle in Transylvania and the upkeep of the forest.
Yeah, he owns it.
It's just he owns it because he's directly related through blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, Tom? You remember about 6 months ago, I think, during June, July, we did a broadcast where we brought up the amount of missing children that never are accounted for worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'll
let anybody else speak on that, please.
I actually remember when I was at school, they used to have these sessions where the police officer would come in and say, "Don't talk to strangers" and such. But he held up a poster of all the missing kids, and this was been in probably 1992, 93. He was holding up a poster of kids that were missing since the 1970s, and there must have been 20, 30 kids on there.
Mm-hmm.
Never found.
Yeah, and you wonder where they go, right? Well, these cults do exist, and there's all these people coming forth when they get older, if they survive this kind of thing, that their grandfather was involved or their father was involved in these cults that were doing rituals with children where they're killing the children. And that's
Yes.
they all get their hands bloody so that if one of them talks,
Exactly.
you know,
I was going to just say that, Mark, because this is the way in which also you control the people who later get positions of power in banks and so on, who are promoted through the financial part of it by being given nice, big homes and big yachts and private planes and so on and so forth. And they are elevated into the position where they can walk down the red carpet. And they are forever beholden to the group that protects them from the diabolical things that they have done through lust, greed, and basically perversion.
Mm-hmm.
But let's put a spot of sunlight into our conversation before I start to kill myself. And that is this. Outside of these very, very small circles, I mean, at the top of the pyramid, it is such a tiny amount of people on planet Earth. It makes you wonder how we are so susceptible and so stupid to allow them to control. The mass of people in the world, even the ones who go to Saturday night football and, you know, cheer on, I don't know, the various, you know, popular culture that is out there. I would suggest to you that 80% of the population is good.
Mm-hmm.
They are good people. They mean well. And our job, as you know, I go back to an article I read in 1978 called "The Secrets Known Only to the Inner Elite," which separates the philosophy of two different warring camps on planet Earth. And I would tell you, our job as elite thinkers is to simply awaken as many people to this. And as the message spreads, I think we are on the side of good, and so goodness will prevail if we can prevent a thermonuclear holocaust. I really do. I think we can turn around the situation in the Western Hemisphere, because people are not bad. They don't mean bad. It's just lack of thinking and critical analysis that leads them the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also contagious apathy. The apathy is contagious.
Yes, you are right. I call it the cult of indifference, Mark. Did you read any of my works?
No, actually, I haven't yet.
Okay, I'll send you some, because you are right. You called it apathy. I call it the cult of indifference. And it's, again, because of the fact they think it doesn't affect them. And because it doesn't affect them personally, you know, immediately, it's the same way as when you say, well, what the Nazis did is possible. And they say, oh, no, it could never happen again. And you say, but look at how it did happen. And it happened in one of the most culturally developed nations in the Western Hemisphere at the time, because Germany was the country that spawned Beethoven, Bach, Schiller, Goethe. Yeah, I mean, this is the country that gave us nuclear physics, that gave us, I mean, there are so many beautiful things. This was one of the most culturally advanced countries during the 20th century. And yet, under economic pressure, with the collapse of the Weimar Republic, and the collapse of the Rätemark, and the despair led them to support a demonic, evil cult and follow it even to the extent where they allowed their country to be completely destroyed within the space of 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
So don't say it can't happen, you see. But people will say to you, yeah, but that's history. Yeah, I know. But if we don't learn from history, we are susceptible to repeating it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Actually, I only have a couple of minutes left here for the interview. But I definitely want to thank you guys for joining the show today, and as well vice versa, for allowing the time for me to speak to you guys about this kind of stuff. I think it was a great conversation with lots of topics discussed, a wide variety of topics that people can look into further afterwards. And yeah, anytime you guys want to get me on your show, don't be shy, you know what I mean? I definitely love speaking about this stuff and getting information out there. So
well, thank you very much, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure being on the show, and we will be inviting you over on one of our shows on Enemy Within Radio. There's just one thing I wanted to ask, actually. Have you got a Twitter or a Facebook?
I do have a Facebook actually. You could check it out. It's just Mark Howitt, MarkHowitt. But Twitter I use not personally. There's a Twitter account for Unveiling the Truth, and there's one for the World Public Union, which is the group I started. And you can check those out at www.worldpublicunion.org, and there's also www.unveilingthetruth.com. So those two websites are pretty much where people can find me, email me, or get in touch with me. On Facebook, I quickly log on and post links for the shows that I do and interviews and information, but I don't spend time on there socializing or anything like that. I'm just on and off, I just go on quickly. So
it's just like we mentioned earlier. We just want to promote as many people as we can. So it's just
okay. Well, let me butt in here because I'm so simple. I don't do any of those technical things because I'm an asshole. The only thing I do is I have Blackhat Tommy at hotmail.co.uk, and as Tom will tell you, most people are too terrified to contact me.
Well,
scary guy.
And all the listeners out there too, don't forget to check out the radio show. It's enemywithinradio.com. And what time do you guys broadcast? Do your broadcasts at?
Basically, people can check us out. The best thing to do is join either the Facebook group, which is called Enemy Within Radio, all one word, or the Twitter page at Enemy Within Talk, or of course, like you mentioned, the webpage enemywithinradio.com. And we broadcast on a Wednesday and a Sunday. On the Wednesday it's 8 p.m. and on the Sunday it's 7 p.m.
Okay,
perfect.
And by the way, I also want to say thank you, Mark, for having us on, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you guys.
Adios, amigos.
Yeah,
Adios.
ciao.